So we've talked a lot lately about the transport vehicles, primarily the ones used by the Empire, but we've discussed a few other factions as well. And there's a major shift that's kind of come to my attention. And it's the shift from the way the Republic used transports to the way the Empire used transport. So I figured today we could take a look at that transition and discuss the differences in the sort of troop transport doctrine between the Grand Army of the Republic and the Imperial military. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. Sorry about the weird lighting, I'm still trying to figure out lighting in this place. So, there's obviously a very substantial shift between the way the Republic moved troops around and the way the Galactic Empire moved troops around. The Republic has famously utilized its LAAT gunship transport hybrids, arguably some of the most effective troop ships in Star Wars history, while the Empire used a wider variety of less versatile but more focused and arguably more capable troop transports. So I figured today we could talk about that shift and how we actually see that shift take place in the Bad Batch, basically immediately after the war. So let's just kind of dive right in with where all this starts with the Republic and their LAATs. During the Clone Wars, the Grand Army of the Republic utilized the Low Altitude Assault Transport, or LAAT, in its infantry variant as its primary infantry transport to and from the battlefield. This light gunship was sort of a mixture of a combat gunship and a troop transport. While it could only carry a relatively small number of troops, it was far more capable in combat, bristling with turrets and various weapon systems, allowing it to directly engage enemy ground forces to clear out a landing area for the troops it was carrying. So it almost served more like, for example, the Russian Hind, a helicopter that is a combination troop transport and gunship. Now, the Republic did use a few other troop transports during the war. We do occasionally see new class shuttles used by Republic soldiers during the war, but usually not in combat scenarios. And they also had those light police gunships we see used on Coruscant. However, when the Clone Wars ended and the Republic transitioned into the Galactic Empire and the Grand Army of the Republic became the Imperial military, there were some key shifts in this doctrine that took effect almost immediately. The Empire pretty quickly shifted from using LAATs as their primary troop transport to using modified new class shuttles, which could carry a much larger number of soldiers, but were far less combat capable on their own, requiring escorts in most cases when they expected a hotter situation. That being said, this reflects the main doctrine shift in the way the Empire fights wars versus the way the Grand Army of the Republic was fighting wars. The Clone Wars was an engagement between two relatively evenly matched sides fighting with similar military capacity, while the Empire expected to primarily be doing policing operation and putting down small rebellions. So the goal became less hot inserting troops into high combat scenarios and more dumping massive amounts of troops onto a planetary body and hopefully overwhelming your enemies with numbers. This is why they quickly transitioned from the low capacity, high capability LAATs to the high-capacity, low-combat capability new class shuttles with a troop compartment added to the bottom of them. These new class shuttles would eventually evolve into the Sentinel and Lambda class shuttles, with the Lambda class being more geared towards transporting VIPs, while the Sentinel became the primary troop transport of the Galactic Empire throughout most of its history. Now, the Sentinel was primarily geared toward bringing a massive number of stormtroopers down to the surface of a planet, and as such, it abandoned a lot of the weapon systems that we would see on gunships like the LAAT-Is used by the Grand Army of the Republic. Its relatively small armament meant that it was primarily designed for moving troops as opposed to engaging ground forces. That being said, it was far more heavily armored than the LAAT, with the idea being that you could land this and the transport itself would serve as a fortress while the troops pour out of it. Now, there is one notable exception to this, one variant of the LAAT that actually remained in service with the Empire, and it's the LAAT-LE, the law enforcement variant of the LAAT, which in practicality looks like a completely different vehicle, so why it would share the name is kind of up in the air, but still it is a similar concept for a vehicle. It's actually smaller than a standard LAAT with much less capability. It still has some fairly formidable weapon systems on board, but it's primarily designed to move small numbers of law enforcement officers, and we do see this used primarily by Imperial civilian law enforcement, but occasionally by the Imperial military, like on the showdown on Lothal. All that to say, there was this sort of dramatic shift in the way the Empire transported its troops, and it comes down to the shift in the Imperial doctrine. A shift from a combat-focused military designed to engage militaries of equal capability to a more or less military police force designed to simply dump manpower at a problem until the problem went away. Which is very Imperial. That fits the Tarkin doctrine basically to a T. But the Empire did ultimately transition over to the Sentinel-Class landing craft, which is unfortunately often overlooked. I think the Sentinel is a very pretty landing craft, but it's often overshadowed by its more famous cousin, the Lambda-Class shuttle. If you'd like to learn more about the Sentinel-Class landing craft, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think this transition actually makes sense for the Galactic Empire. Do you think it would have been better if they stuck with the LAAT as it's more geared towards direct combat, or do you think it makes sense for them to transition over to the Sentinel-Class and, I guess in shorter term, the new class with the troop compartment underneath it, which are more geared towards just carrying large numbers of troops and not doing much else? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.